Hello there everyone. Today I want to show you how to wrap a stone or a cabochon with macrame. And this is what I'm going to be showing you. And this is what I call the looping technique. So this is what it looks like on the front and the back. And then I'm going to show you a few different variations to do for the top to attach it to something. And this is just a blue quartz cabochon that I've got. Got a flat back, but you can really use this technique for anything, whether it's a different shape of cabochon or whether it's a more natural stone or even something thicker as well, because all you do is make the loops bigger, which I'm going to tell you throughout the video. So it can be adapted to many different shapes and types of stones and cabochons. So that's a really useful technique to learn. So if you want to learn how to do that, then stay tuned. And these are the things that you're going to need. You'll need whatever cord that you're using. Now in this case I'm using some 1mm satin cord, but you can use really anything that you have around or anything that you would like to use. And then you'll need a scissor to obviously cut your cord. And then as well you'll need whatever cabochon or whatever stone it is that you want to wrap. So get your things together and then let's get started. So the first thing we need to do is get our cords ready. Now what you need to do is cut 3 lengths of your cord, and each length needs to be about 3 meters long. So that's 3 separate lengths of 3 meters each. Now that's quite long, but in this video I'm going to show you how to finish off the pendant in 2 different ways, and one of the ways you won't need quite as much cord, but I'll go through that as we go along. But for one way you'll need to cut this cord ready. So then the first thing we want to do is you want to make sure when you've cut all your cords, you need to lie them end to end right next to each other, and then you want to fold them over in half so you find about where the middle is, where I have my loop, and then you want to keep hold of that and you just want to tie a regular knot around the end like so. You want to make sure you have a bit of a loop on the other side of the knot, and then you want to tighten this knot, but you want to not leave the loop too large, because what you need to do is just to make sure that it's large enough to get all your cords through later on. So you don't want to leave it too large, but just enough space to get through, like so. So now that you've made your knot and you have your little loops on the other side, you want to fasten it to something so you can start working on it. In this case I'm just using a macrame board or project board. Looks like this on the other side. So I'm going to be using that to work on, and then I also have some pins to pin my work in place. So I'm going to grab a pin and then just put it through my loops at the top, just to fasten it down to the board. Like so. And then I'm just going to grab another pin and put it through the knot, just to keep it nice and secure for me to start working with it. Like so. It's fastened to my board, and then now we need to start making our knots. So what we need to do is we want to separate our cords out, and because you started out with 3 lengths of cord and then doubled them over, we have 6 lengths that we're going to be working with. And we need to start by making our knots in the center first. So you want to pull 2 cords out, one to each side, and just put them to the side so they're out of the way. And you want to work with the middle 4 first, like so. These 4, and then the 2 middle ones are going to be our holding cords for now, and you want to start making square knots around them with the other 2. So you just put one side over. It doesn't matter what side you start with as long as you're consistent throughout your whole piece. So I'll just start with my left side, put that over, take my right side over that, and then put it down underneath that one and the middle cords, and then pull it up through the loop. You create it on the other side, so you end up with something like this, like a pretzel shape, and then you tighten that all the way up to just below the original knot you made, and then you want to finish off that square knot with the other side. So do the same thing, just starting from the other side. So make the other half of that square knot and tighten that, like so. So that's one full square knot now. You want to make a few more of these. If you want a bit more detail on how to make a basic square knot, I do have a video on how to do basic macrame knots, and I'll link that in the description box. So that's my second one, second full square knot. I'm going to make another one. Always starting with my left side, because that's the one I started with originally. But you can start with your right side, like I said, whatever is most comfortable for you. Like so. So now I have 3 full square knots. So now we need to work to our sides, change up how we're doing the knots. So we now need to split up the 4 that we've just been working with. So you take 2 and put them to each their own side. So the working cord, 1 to each their own side, and then the 2 middle ones, just split them up as well. Then you want to work with one side at a time. So what we need to do now is bring the other cords into it that were left out in the beginning. And to do that, you're going to continue just making your square knots, except we're doing it with these 3 cords now. So instead of doing it in the middle. But you do exactly the same thing. On this side, I'm also going to start on my left side, making my square knots. And just tighten it up to where your other knots ended. Just like that, you can see. So the cord that you brought into it is kind of loose and making a loop on the side. And then finish off that square knot. Like so. Tighten that. So that's one side. On the sides we only want to make 1 square knot. So move over to the other side. And you want to do the same thing, except I like to start from the other side just to make it look a little bit more even. So I'm going to start with my right side on the right side. But the same basic square knot, and tighten that, like so, and then finish it off with the other side. Making a square knot, so you always get your pretzel shape. Like so, again just making 1. Then as you can see, because we started from opposite sides on each side, you get more the consistency look of the knots. Make sure they're nice and tight, like so. So that's basically the first set that we've done. So now you want to separate out the outer cords again, just like we did originally, and only work with the inner 4 cords, the middle 4 cords. So again, the 2 middle ones, they become the holding cords again that you want to make your square knots around. And then these 2 are your working cords. So just like the first section we did, we're just going to continue making square knots on this section, the exact same thing. Again, I start on my left side, making the first half of my square knot and tying it all the way up, and that brings that little gap together and brings the 2 outer knots together. And the other half of the square knot, and tighten it. So that's one full square knot. And remember in the first section we did 3 square knots, so I'm going to do the same here. The other half of it. That's 2, so one more. Tighten that, like so. So we've made 3 full square knots again on this section. So again we now need to split these 4 cords up, 2 to each their own side. Start with one side and use these 3, so bring the outer one into it again, and then make 1 square knot around this one, like so, just like we did before, the exact same way. Tighten it all the way up to the bottom of your previous section of knots. So again you can see you get this loop on the outside. Finish off the square knot. And tighten it. Make sure that this loose piece of cord sits right, so there's not too much, so you get too big of a gap, but not too tight so it pulls it up too much. Just so it sits nicely. So there's one full on the one side. Go back to the other side. You need to do 1 square knot on here. I'm going to do like before, where I start with the other side, just to make it look more consistent. So I start with my right side now, on the right side. Bring that over first. And bring the other one over that. And then underneath both, and up through the loop. So you get your pretzel shape. And then tighten that. Making sure that the loops on both sides are even. And finish off this square knot. Like so. And as you go you can always put in some pins along the way to keep your work nice and fastened down. It's a little bit easier to work with. So that's the outside ones again. So we're back to now needing to bring them together. So we're going to take the outer 2 cords out of the way. So we have the 4 middle ones. Like so. And you just continue making your square knots around these, your 2 holding cords. And just make sure you stay consistent in what side you start with. Like I said, it doesn't matter what side you start with, just as long as you do the same one throughout. Finish off the square knot. And the next one. So that's the second one. I'm going to do one more to do 3 again. And finish the last one off. Like so. So that's again 3 full square knots, just like I've done 3 in all the other sections. Now I will say you don't have to do 3, you can do 2 or you can do 4. It all really depends on the kind of stone or whatever you're wrapping. It all depends on how that is. Like on mine is quite thin in a way. It's flat on the back and then quite thin. This is just a regular cabochon. So I don't want my loops to be too large. Say if you made 4 square knots, that would make your loops larger, which will be really good, say if it's more of an uneven stone that you're wrapping, or an actual natural stone as well. So that would be a good idea to maybe do 4 square knots in between, or maybe you can do 2 if it's quite a small one. So it's really depends on what stone it is that you're wrapping. So again, I've done the 3, so I need to move to the outsides now. So separate them out, 3 cords on each side, bring the other one into it, and just continue with 1 square knot on the side. Tighten it. Like so. One side and then the other side. And again I start with the opposite side. And tighten it to get your loop. And finish off that square knot. Like so. So we're back to the middle. Put the 2 outer cords out of the way and just focus on doing square knots around the middle ones to bring the 2 outer ones together again. So you just continue doing this throughout. You can choose to do 3 square knots in between like I've done, or more or less, just like I said, depending on the kind of look you're going for, but also the kind of stone that you're using. So that's really up to you. So continue like this until you reach the length that you need it to be, and then I'll show you what we do next. So I've now reached the length that I know I need my piece to be to reach around my cabochon. And the way that I finished off at the end was just, I did my knots on the side to make the loops, and I just did 1 square knot in the middle just to bring them together. That's all, you don't want to do a whole section again. So that's just how I finished it off at the end. And then what you want to do is, the way you measure how long you need your macrame work to be, is you obviously want to get whatever stone or cabochon you're using out, and you can either get like a flexible measuring tape and actually measure around the stone, or you can take your piece off the board when you think you're getting to the point where you're done and actually just wrap this around and see if it fits. Or otherwise, what I normally like to do is just get a bit of spare cord and use one end and just lay that down on the side, so I have the end here, and I wrap the rest around to make sure it meets up with the end, and I keep hold of that, and I know then this is the length around my stone, and I then use that to measure against my piece, because you can also do that as you go along the way. But what you want to remember to do is when you measure from the top, don't include the knot and the loop where you measure. You want to start measuring just below that. So basically where you started doing your macrame knots. So measure from there all the way down, and if it fits, then we're ready to go on to the next step. So we're now ready. We can take it off the board or whatever else you're working on. And then here you have the piece that's going to go around your stone or your cabochon. As you can see, we have the loops all the way along the sides, and those are the ones we're going to be using now to help wrap the actual stone. So what we need to do now is you want to grab 2 of your leftover cords at the end. Now I prefer to not grab these 2, and I don't grab the 2 in the middle. I like to split them up in 3, the middle one on each side. So these 2. And you just want to do one at a time. So you want to get the end of that cord, this one that I'm using. Try and get the other ones out of the way. Like that. So you get the end of that one, and then this is where we want to use the loops to basically sew in and out. So I'm going to start going through the first one, like so. Just come down through that one, and you don't pull it tight straight away, you just now want to get your cords through them all. And then I come up through the next one, like that. So you can see looping down through the first one and up through the next one. So I'm now coming out, coming up. So I want to go back down through the next one. And just leave your cord loose while you're doing this. And come back up. And back down. And you just do this all the way down the side. Just basically sew in and out of each loop. And like I said, because this is what we're then going to pull together that's going to create the cradle for the stone. But say if you have quite an irregular stone, or it's quite thicker, maybe it's like a natural stone or something, then you might want to do, like I said, 4 square knots in between each section, because this means that your loops are going to be bigger and then they're going to cover more of the stone. And if it's quite an irregular shaped one or a natural one, you might need that extra security to hold it in place. So just go in and out of each one. I've got my last one left, like so. Come down through that. And that's the whole one side done. So go back up and grab the cord from the other side. I'm going to use this one and just do the exact same thing, just down the other side. So go down through the first one. Come up through the next one. And down. And so on, and you just continue all the way down to the end again on this side. So I've now weaved my cords all the way down both sides through the loops, catching each loop, and they're now coming out at the opposite end. So now what we need to do is basically start trapping in the stone. So what you do is you keep hold of your piece and you want to start pulling at these cords a little bit. Just do it a little at a time, because you want this to then get the nice shape. And what you want to make sure is that the cord that you weave through, it goes outside of the knots, so not lay on top of the knots, because it's that cord that's going to help catch the stone in place. So just start weaving it or pulling it a bit tight so it gets a nice shape like this. And then we can put in our stone. Now this is going to be the most fiddly part, because you have to hold the stone in place while you're doing this. And then while you have it in there, you can pull it a bit tighter, because then it will naturally shape and form around the stone. Like so. As you can see, it's pulling out the loops, which is what's going to help catch in the stone. And on the back side as well. You just want to go over and have a look. If any of the cord that you weave through is laying on top of the knots, just pull it down. And as you can see, you pull it tight and it pulls the loops out. And that's exactly what you want. So that's what I mean as well when I said to make, say, maybe more space, do more knots in between the sections. Instead of I did 3, maybe make 4 or something. That'll make your loops bigger, which means that it'll come out further onto the stone. So if you need that extra security, you can do that. Otherwise, and this is how I've done it for mine, So what we need to do now is secure it in place. And so to trap the stone in place and secure the whole thing in, what I like to do is grab these two pieces of cord that are weaved in and out of the loops, just do one at a time, just grab the end of them, and then I just want to go back through the very first loop on the other side. So the very first one we actually weaved through. And just get your cord through there. So the one coming from this side, stay on the same side, and then on the other side, on the back side in my case, grab that and feed that through the loop as well. You might need to just pull out the loop a bit to get it through, like so. And then just make sure you don't trap the other cords in place. I want them to come through out just in the middle, like so. And then all you do basically is you keep pulling it tight, and what you can do is just go over each individual loop, see if it sits right. You might need to pull out a little bit somewhere to make it, just to make it look even really, but you can always do that at the end as well, and to just adjust it at the end. The first priority now is just to secure it in place. So pull it nice and tight, and then what we need to do now is just secure them in place so they stay where you want it to stay. To do that, you can kind of grab some of the cords. It doesn't have to be specific ones. I just like to start with the top ones, the ones that are coming out of the middle here, and I just put one on each side of this original knot that we made to create the loop, and all I want to do is just do a regular knot on the other side of it, like so, and then make sure that that knot goes around that large knot, and tighten that nicely, because this is just to secure everything in place, like so. So that's one, and then I'll do the others as well. So just bring them around on each their side of that large knot with the loop, and just do a regular knot, just any regular overhand knot like so, and just tighten it around that large knot. Make sure it's nice and tight so it stays in place, and it's snug and nice and tight around your stone or your cabochon. Like so. So that's four cords in total, 2 sets, like so. So you're now left with the ones that you weaved through and that you just went through the very first loop again. So I'm going to do the same thing with them. Bring them back over, and just make that regular knot on the other side. This is just to secure the whole piece in place, but also the actual cords, like so. So I brought all the cords over and tied one knot with each pair of them on this side, and they're kind of now split into 2 sections, 2 groups, with 3 in each group. Now what I'm just going to do is the one furthest to the front, I'm just going to bring that around the front, make sure the cords lie quite nicely, just so it doesn't mess up the look, and then I just want to bring them to the back and make a knot at the back, just so they're all coming out from the back. So just the same thing, just with all the cords at the same time, and just tighten that, like so. And as you can see, it still looks nice and tidy. And now what we need to do, this is where we need to use the loop that we created in the beginning. So you can get something out like maybe a pin or crochet needle or something, or knitting needle will be good as well. And just to open up your loops, like so. Just to make sure that you can get your cords through here. So I just take one cord at a time. You now want to get all your cords that are loose and get them through this loop. This is why you need to make sure that you did have a bit of space there, enough space for them to get through, but not too large either. But not too small, because obviously you want to make sure you can get them all through. So just grab one cord at a time and then try and feed that through. Sometimes help by pressing down the loops a little bit to open them up. You might have to do one at a time. So just get all your cords that are loose through all 3 loops at the top, and just pull them all the way through like this. Take the next one, do the same thing. And just take your time doing it. Now as you can see, if you try and pressing them down a little bit, that usually helps. And as you go as well, you can always just get back in with your pin or whatever you're using to open up the loops. And press them down. Push your end through and get through all 3. Like so. So just do that with all of them, and then I'll show you what we do next. So I've now got all my 6 cords through my loops, and I'm making sure that they're coming from the back and going towards the front, so coming out of the front. And then what we need to do is just basically pull them while we're pressing down the loop. Just so they sit nicely, like so. And now that's basically the stone or cabochon, whatever you're using, set into your macrame. So now you're left with different choices how you can finish off your piece. And like I mentioned, I'm going to show you how to do 2 different ways of that. So the first way I'm going to show you how to finish it off is by making a bail at the top. And this is the method if you're going to be using this, where you can make your cords quite a bit shorter from the beginning. So instead of having each length of cord being 3 meters, you can make them about 1.5 to 2 meters, and that should be sufficient for this. But you ended it like I've just showed you. So now I'm just going to leave the piece laying down, and basically we still have our 6 cords, and I'm going to be using all 6 in this case, just because it's always nice to have a bit of a substantial bail to it. And I'm just going to split them up, so I have 2, 1 on each side and the rest in the middle. So I have 4 cords in the middle, and the 4 in the middle are just going to be my holding cords. So all I'm going to do is use the square knot again to go in and make square knots around these 4 middle holding cords. You can always put some pins in some of your work up here if you want to keep it down fastened to a board or something. But otherwise, you just continue with your square knot that we've been using throughout the whole piece. Doesn't matter what side you start from in this case either. And you just start making a square knot. That's 1/2. Finish it off with the other half. Like so. That's 1 square knot. And continue with that. Again, bring it over. In my case, I always do my left side to begin with for some reason. It's just habit. And then bring the other one over that and then underneath all of them and up through the loop. so. You just continue with this, making a nice length of square knots. How many you want to make, that's completely your choice. How many you make then determines how large your bail is going to be. So you just keep making however many you want, and you can then, throughout as you're doing it, obviously measure as you go along to see how large you want the bail to be. So just continue doing that. So I'll continue making my square knots, and I've ended up with 14 square knots in mine, but like I said, you can do whatever you feel is going to suit your design and your stone. So what you need to do now is you can flip it over, and then you need to fold this back on itself. So this is what's going to form the bail. And then what we need to do is place this where we want it to sit, and then we basically continue, do another square knot, so lay it like this, and then put it over like you've been doing, and then bring the other one, but as you're bringing it back around, you need to bring it all the way around the back of the stone as well, so you have it looping around the front as well. And then you tighten it into place like so. Finish off that square knot with the other side. Do the same thing, so bring the other side over, and then bring this one back underneath the stone again. So this is going to secure the bail in place, and then tighten that as well. Like so. So there you have the bail, as you can see, attached to your stone and your macrame work. And then you can obviously use this, hang this on whatever you want to hang it on, and then that's your finished piece in this way. And then you obviously just need to get rid of your cords. Now what I would do with that, I would just cut off these four that were your holding cords. I would cut them off now, and then I would just use the side, my working cords, to just do one more square knot after I've cut them off to kind of seal the whole thing in place. But I would also personally put a bit of glue around here to seal off all the ends, and also the working cords before you cut them off. I would put a bit of glue to seal them off as well. So you just cut the middle ones off, your holding cords, put a bit of glue on there, do another square knot around like we've just done, and then to get rid of these ends, just put a bit of glue in the well and that around like you would normally finish off a macrame bracelet, and then that will be your finished wrapped cabochon with macrame with a bail on it. So that's the first method, how to finish it off. So the other way that I'm going to show you how to finish it off is to actually incorporate the necklace part into the same piece. And this is where it comes in that we need the long cords. So this is where you need them 3 meters or so from the beginning. So what I'm going to do is again just turn it around, and you have different options of what you can do for this really. Because what you got is you have 6 cords coming out in total. So that means you can have 3 going up each side, because you obviously want to do both sides of the necklace. So what you could do, one option will be to just start, obviously do one side at a time. You could always do the spiral knot. So that's just 1/2 of the basic square knot. Put that over, put the other one over that, underneath both, and through the loop. Just like we start off a square knot. Again, you get your pretzel. And it doesn't matter which way you go, that's personal preference, which way you start with. But that's where then, instead of finishing off with the other side to make a square knot, you continue going the same direction with your knot. So you keep bringing the same side over first. And again, if you're unsure about this knot, I also have this in my basic macrame knots video that I'll link in the description box. You just keep going and it'll start to twist on you. You then just bring your cords around to continue. And as you get further and further along, you can start to see that it's actually twisting on you, which is what you want, hence why it's a twist knot. So you just continue doing this all the way up the side. As you can see, it's starting to twist. So if this is the effect that you want, you can do this all the way up on both sides until you've reached the length that you want it to be, or till you run out of cord, whichever. But I'm going to show you a different way as well. So the way that I'm going to finish off my piece up the sides is I'm going to be using alternating half hitches. So again, you have your cords separated, 3 on each side. The first thing I want to do to tighten these in place, I just want to do a knot with these. Just a regular knot like we've been doing a few times throughout. So like this, and just tighten that here. Because now what we need to do is just cut off one cord from each side. Because for this technique with the alternating half hitches, we only need 2 cords on each side. Now what you want to just make sure to do is just have a look at your cords before you cut them, and they're probably going to be a bit different lengths now because you've been using them differently throughout. So just make sure that you cut off the very shortest one, so you're left with the longest. So for me, that's this one. So I'm going to get my scissor and just go in and cut this off nice and close to where it comes out of the knot, like so. And what you can always do is just go in a little bit of glue just right on where you cut that off. And then the other side, same thing. Just figure out which cord is the shortest and make sure that that's the one you cut off. So that's this one for me. Again, go in as close as you can get, like so. So you now have 2 cords left on each side. So what we're going to do now is I'm just going to pin this in so it won't move around too much. Is again, we just do one side at a time, focusing on whatever side you want to start with. So you have these 2 cords now, and then what we need to do now is the alternating half hitches. So all there is to that is, again, doesn't matter what side you start with, because you'll be doing the same thing throughout, alternating anyway. I'm just going to take my right one over the other one, like so, and then pull it back around and through the loop. I can show you pull it back through the loop you created, and then you get what looks like this, a bit of a reverse 6. And then you pull that up nice and tight, making sure the other one is pulled a bit taut while you're tightening the knot. So that's the first one. Now to get the alternating half hitch, we need to do the same thing, but with the other cord. So you then bring that over, back around, and through the loop. So on this side you get a regular 6. So that's one way of trying to remember it. Is on this side you'll get a regular 6, on the other side is an opposite 6. And then you just again hold the holding cord tight, nice and stretched out, and just tighten the knot. And just keep changing from side to side with each single knot you do, like so. You get your 6 and then your reverse 6. So right one over left one, back around and through the loop, and tighten. Left one, over right one, back around and through the loop. And keep alternating like this for every single knot. So this is quite an easy way to finish it off as well, and it gives you a really nice effect, almost a little bit like a chain effect, just with cord. So you can obviously keep doing this for as long as you want your necklace to be, or until you run out of cord, whichever comes first. And you will want to repeat the same thing on the other side as well. So I've now finished off both sides and created my necklace part, and all that's left to do now is finish off the ends. Now you do have a couple of options with this. You could go in and use what's called cord ends, like these. They look like this, so that's where you place your cord into this little well and then close it up. I have a video on how to use these and how to finish off a macrame pieces tutorial, so I'll link that in the description box. But if you don't want to use this type of thing, if you want to keep it all macrame, then the way that I'm going to finish off this one is, on one side I want to make a loop, and on the other side I want to make a bit of a knot, not just a regular small knot, but a quite substantial knot that will then go through the loop, and that's going to be my fastening for this. So we'll start off with making the loop. So I'm going to get a little crochet hook out for this. Now this has got to be quite fine because you need to be able to get it through your knots that you've made. So this is a 2mm crochet hook. It's just a very fine one. And then you can do on whatever side you want to do. I'm going to do my loop on this side. And what I'm going to do is kind of the piece of macrame that I've already done, I've finished it off. I'm going to fold it back to see how large I want the loop to be. And then when I'm happy with the size, I'm going to go in where the end meets the other side and put my crochet hook through there, like so. And then I'm going to fold this back around, and I need to go in and grab my cords and pull them through the macrame knots that I've made. That's one. Go back through the same hole and grab the other one. Like so. So you now have the two ends, your two cords coming through your knots, like that. And then obviously we need to fasten that in place. So what you do with that is you grab your ends, and they're again going to be your working cords, and basically the piece you've already macrameed, basically the chain you've made with your knots, that's going to be the holding cord, because we're just going to make a couple of square knots around that to fasten the loop in place. So pull them all the way through until your knots meet your knots, and then just make some square knots around. Start with whatever side you want to start with, it doesn't matter. Make sure you pull the knot all the way up to where your cords are coming out through your knots, like so. That's one half. Finish it off with the other side. Again, push it all the way up so they sit nice and close. Tighten them really nicely. And then I'm going to do one more. Just repeat the exact same thing. And the other half of the square knot. Like so. pull them really nice and tight. So there, you then created your loop. So then all I'm going to do is, before I cut the ends off, I just want to put a little bit of glue just to hold the knots in place. Because also this will be a part that obviously is the clasp part, so you'll be using that a lot. It's going to get a lot of wear, so you need to make sure it's as secure as possible. So for that I'm going to get out my Hypo cement glue. It's really good glue this. It dries clear and it still stays flexible, so it's not going to go hard and then scratch against your skin. And it's really strong, but then also the actual applicator has a really fine tip, so that's really good for getting the glue right into where you want it to go. So I'm just going to go across my square knot, go into the well that you created with the knot, and go around the ends to secure them in place, and do that on both sides. Like so. And then you obviously want to let that to dry. So for the other side, we'll need something to go through that loop and hold it in place. Now you can just tie some knots and make like a large knot to go through the loop, but I'm going to finish it off with a few beads. So we've ended up with our half hitches. We just stopped making them to reach the length that we wanted it to be. So what I'm going to do now is get some beads out. And if you just have a look at where you finished it, because you kind of want to keep making these. But I'm just going to get some beads out. These are some blue quartz that match my cabochon. You can obviously use whatever you want. And these have a pretty good size to go through the loop. So you just want to make sure that they're not too large but not too small either. So thread that on to one of your cords, like so. So I've threaded it onto the side that if we continued making the chain like we were doing, we needed to use this one as the working cord and that as the holding cord. So I've threaded it onto the one that was going to be the holding cord. And then I just go in and make a half hitch, just like if we continued doing the chain part, like so, to get your reverse 6. And then tighten that so it loops around your bead, like so. And then we just want to do a couple more half hitches. So continue like you were doing the chain, so do the opposite side and tighten. And I'll do one more and tighten, and one more. You can do however many you want to have in between. So you make however many half hitches you want in between your beads. I'm just going to use 2 beads to finish off the end here. And then I'm going to get my next one, and you can do however many you want in between. Just make sure when you put your next one on, that's on the holding cord, like so. Push it all the way down, and I'm going to cage that in with a half hitch with the working cord, tighten it so it loops around the bead, like so. And just do a couple of the half hitches, alternating half hitches. I'm not going to do too many on this side now, because this is where we want to finish it off, like so. Now to finish off this end, what I'm going to do is take my 2 cords and just tie a regular knot. So instead of the half hitches, I'm going to go in and tie a regular knot like you would do any other knot. And just tighten that all the way up to basically finish off your knots, because that will secure them in place much more. You want to really pull this tight, like so. And then what you could always do is go in and put a little bit of glue on this knot, because that will really hold it in place long term, like that. And then we have these ends left. Again, you can put some maybe quite small beads on the end of these cords or something. I'm just going to make a knot on each of them, however long I want them to be. So about like that. I'll do that on the other one as well. So roughly they're the same length. And tighten them nicely. Like so. And now we can go in. You can also put a little bit of glue in these knots if you want to, just to hold them in place. And cut off your cord, like so. And then that's basically this side done. So now the glue on my loop has dried, so I'm just going to go in and cut off the excess cord. So you just go in and get as close as you can to your piece, without obviously cutting into your piece. And that's the thing as well by using this type of glue, because when it dries it doesn't go hard, it stays flexible. You can cut through it with a scissor after it's dried. So like so. And it still stays flexible, which means it's not going to be uncomfortable against the skin. So I've now finished off both sides, and then we can just use it. So we'll get the loop, push the beads through the loop. All the way through, and then you can use them as they are, because then they'll kind of work as a stopper to not pull through the loop. That's why if you make sure that you don't make the loop too large, so basically the beads only just snugly fit through. So you can wear it like that. If you're a bit unsure that it's not going to hold, you can always use these ends to then bring back around and then tie a little knot around your end, just to hold it in place. Just a loose knot will do. But this is just one way of finishing it off anyway. There's going to be loads of other ways out there. This is just my way of doing it. So that's how you wrap a cabochon or a stone. So this is the main part, and you can obviously do with it what you want. So I hope you enjoyed that, and thank you very much for watching. Hello there everyone. Today I want to show you how to make these macrame mandala flowers. Now I've turned these into hair clips. I just attached a clip on the back, put felt on the back. So if you want to learn how to make these, then keep watching. Now these are the things that you're going to need. You obviously need your scissor to cut your cord, and then you need whatever cord you decide to work.